Okay. Diptychs and cards. We left the smithy and went to a carpentry workshop. It was a short walk since both were in the craftsman's alley. We passed by about 3 workshops before arriving at a large door with a carved design on the front, showing a chisel and a saw crossed in front of a large tree. Benno opened the door and walked in while still carrying me. I'm Benno from the Gilberta Company. Is the foreman here? Sorry, the foreman is out right now. Wait, mine? Oh, this is the workshop you work at, Sieg. There was a familiar face at the workshop. Lutz's second oldest brother, Sieg, who was just the perfect height to make eye contact with me in Benno's arms, was standing with his jaw dropped. You know this kid? He's Lutz's older brother. Out of all three, he's still the second oldest. Benno set me down, at which point Sieg finally managed to notice Lutz. I could hear him whispering, "Is that really you, Lutz?" Lutz always got changed in the room he was borrowing from the Gilberta Company. No doubt this was the first time Sieg had ever seen Lutz wearing his apprentice clothes with his hair brushed. He looked completely different wearing his work clothes than he did even when wearing his normal clothes and holding a basket to go to the forest and such. Hate that. Huh. Lutz's older brother, huh? I'm here to make an order. One moment, please. I'll go get my supervisor. Sieg hurriedly dashed into the store, and after a moment's wait, a somewhat wider man came out. Hey, Benno, welcome. What can I make for you this time? Benno called for Lutz, who put the diptych I was making for Fran on the table. Benno then stated his order while pointing at it. I want you to make a wood cover the same size as this. Put my source crest on the front and carve my name on the back. The supervisor took out a low-tech tape measure and measured the diptych all over while writing measurements onto a board. As they began discussing what kind of wood to use, the spelling of his name, details of the crest, and the kind of lettering to use, Sieg popped back out to the front of the store, probably concerned about Lutz's presence. Sieg, can I make an order too? You too, mine? Sure, I guess. I want boards that are thin but hard, all the same size, which should be about... I started to estimate the size of my hands, so Sieg hurriedly went and got a tape measure. After deciding on the width and height, we determined the thickness, then I told him I want 70 of these. 70? What do you need that many for? I'm going to make karuta for the 35 letters of the alphabet. Gil and Delia were apprentice attendants, but they were illiterate, and apparently attendants needed to know how to read and write so they could do paperwork, write their master's letters, and basically do a lot of things that Fran was doing for me. I could tell clear as day that Gil would get jealous if I gave Fran a gift but not him. When I thought about what gift I could get for Gil, for the first thing I tried to think of was something that would help him have fun learning to read. Karuta were a kind of Japanese playing cards, and if I made them out of sturdy wooden boards, then all the kids in the orphanage could have fun playing with them. The orphans would have to learn to read eventually, so they might as well get a head start with something fun. Karu, what? Are you making something weird again? Uh-huh, I sure am. How long will it take? It won't be too long. It's basically just cutting them to be the same size. Just cutting it won't be enough. You need to polish it so the corners and sides are smooth. Like that hair stick of yours? I give a big nod and Sieg scratched his head. Polishing each one individually will probably take a lot of time. But I wasn't in that much of a hurry to finish the Karuta boards. It'll take about 10 days for the other stuff I'm ordering to finish, so just finish them before then if you can. Yeah, there's plenty of time. How about I pay twice as much for each board as I did for the hair sticks you made for us over the winter? I'll have to ask my supervisor about that. I'm not too good with prices, said Sieg. Sieg's supervisor seemed to have finished this discussion with Benno a moment ago and had been listening in on our conversation. What did he make for you before? Sieg helped us make hair sticks for our winter handiwork, 1 middle copper each. So that'd be 2 middle coppers each this time, huh? Not a bad price for a personal request, but it's hard to say that's a fair price for a workshop job, yeah? The supervisor spoke with a grin, but I hadn't actually offered a particularly low price. I knew the price of wood from buying lumber for our paper, and I knew the wages that craftsmen were paid. Lutz must have noticed the same thing because he looked at the supervisor with sharp eyes. If we assume that this workshop's handling fee is 30%, then given the price of wood and the pay of craftsmen, mine's offer was actually more than enough to cover this job. Especially since she's not ordering just one, she's ordering 70. You're looking down on mine because she looks like a pre-baptizing child, aren't you? Finished Lutz with a smile closely resembling Mark's, making the supervisor flinch. Lutz, what are you doing? My job. Sieg yelled like he usually did when bullying Lutz at home, and Lutz replied without taking his eyes off the supervisor. It seemed that Benno and Mark had trained him extremely well, given that he could negotiate with an adult on equal terms. He had come so far from a year ago when he wasn't even able to read more than a few numbers and had rejoiced over learning to write his name. His growth was inspiring. Sieg, don't interrupt. Lutz is negotiating with the supervisor right now. You just said you don't understand prices much, didn't you? I threw Lutz a helping hand, and Sieg looked between me and him with distress written on his face. Of mine, Lutz is He's working really hard as an apprentice merchant, just like you're learning the skills necessary for your job. Lutz is learning the wisdom and techniques necessary to be a merchant. In this world where practically all information had to be earned through direct communication, it was extremely rare for kids to successfully find jobs without their family's help. I can imagine that Lutz's family had continued to reject his employment without ever actually seeing him do his job. I was probably witnessing the first time any of them saw Lutz at work. Sieg looked at Lutz with a conflicted expression like he wanted to say something but he wasn't able to. Sieg, why not be happy that Lutz is working hard and being successful? He has no answer. Lutz and the supervisor ultimately settled on the price I had first suggested. Bennett, who had been fondly regarding Lutz's personal growth, lifted me up with one arm and used the other to ruffle Lutz's hair while walking out of the carpentry workshop. Over his shoulder, I could see Sieg frowning. 10 days later, the styluses and the boards which would become Karata were finished. Naturally, the diptych frame Benno ordered was finished too. He took the ornately carved frame to his store, looking pleased, and poured wax into it to finish the job. So mine, how do you use this thing? Benno held up his diptych looking excited. Lutz was holding his too, and seemed interested too. These exist to make it easier to write notes on the go. You can write letters in the wax by using the stylus stuck to the rings. The frame is small enough to hold with one hand, and unlike paper, it's firm enough to write on without it pressing against the surface. The good thing about diptychs is that you don't need a servant holding ink following you around. Benno promptly held up the diptych one hand and wrote on it. He carved into the wax with the pointed tip, leaving marks within. I get it. The marks stay in the wax. That's right, and they won't go away when you close it, unlike how easy it is to accidentally rub the markings off of slates. But since there's limited space, you should rewrite the notes on paper or boards once you get home. Once that's done, you can use it again by smoothing out the wax, I think. I had never actually used a diptych before, though I had read about them in books. They said that in the past, tax collectors had jotted notes on them while sitting on the backs of horses. Even if the wax inside starts breaking up, you could just dig it out and pour fresh wax inside. So, do you think these will be good products? They'll sell exclusively to merchants and nobles, since most commoners are illiterate. With that demographic in mind, we need to work with a carpentry workshop that can deliver high-quality engravings. But the convenience of just being able to write on the spot without ink makes up for it. Ben listed his thoughts on the diptych while stroking the engraving of his crest. Will they sell well? Probably with merchants, but I don't know about nobles. They have attendants carrying pen and ink all times, after all. Though, no reason nobles wouldn't buy them for their attendants, now that I think about it. I actually thought of these while watching Fran work. The ones attendants use won't need that much decoration, which should save on costs. Alright, I'll buy the rights. I promptly sold the rights to diptychs to Benno. The mine workshop couldn't make them since they need metal styluses, and in any case, I needed the money immediately. By the way, mine, what are you going to use the boards for? Benno asked about the boards currently stuffed haphazardly into a box. The carpentry workshop didn't offer any particular bagging system, so you brought your own bags to carry your order home. Once the Karata were done, it would probably be smart for me to ask Dad to make me a convenient carrying case. These are Karata. They're not finished yet. I'll need to write on them first. Half of them will be picture cards, one for each letter of the alphabet, with the picture being something that has its name start with that letter. For example, I opened my diptych, drew a picture on the left side, then wrote the letter on the right side, a picture of a stylus, and the letter S. That was basically half of what fully fledged Karata would be. I then added the line, stylus, what you use to write on the diptych beneath the letter. I showed my creation to Benno proudly, but he looked at me with something closely resembling a horrible grimace. Are you planning on drawing all of these? Yes. I don't want to trust this to someone who isn't familiar with Karata. After all, I intend to give them to Gil as a gift, but for some reason Lutz was cradling his head. Mine, let someone else take care of these, especially the art. With skills like that, nobody will even know what the drawings are supposed to be. Think about how Gil would feel getting these. Yeah, your handwriting's great, but your art is awful, Benno added. Their merciless criticism made me gasp. I wasn't that bad at drawing. At the very least, nobody had called me bad at art back in my Arano days. Well, that was back then. My art's not bad. It might look odd since I took some artistic liberties, but that's what it means to be a trailblazer. The world will understand my talent sooner or later. It'll be fine. Yeah, you're not fooling anybody. Give up and face the facts. You need to let someone else draw the art for you. Got it? I'm not bad. I'm not. Since I didn't know whether Benno and Lutz's appraisal of my art was accurate, I went to my temple chambers the next day and asked my attendants. And that is what Benno told me. I explained showing Delia my art in the diptych. Her eyes widened. Well, it looks like he was right. Have you never seen a picture of a piece of art in your life before, sister mine? Nah, she's got to have seen the art in the temple halls and stuff. She's just bad at art, plain and simple. Delia and Gil launched spears to my heart. Wounded, I turned to Fran, only to see him averting his gaze while furrowing his brows uncomfortably. Well, in a manner of speaking, your art is very unique. My attendants had been raised in a temple where the chapel, halls, and so on were filled with high-class paintings and sculptures, not to mention the decorations in the blue priest rooms. To them, art needed to be realistic and detailed, but my kind of cutesy, simple art flying in the face of what they were used to. Sister mine, might I suggest that you entrust the art to Wilma? She received art lessons from the Blue Shrine Maiden she served in the past. Really? Art lessons? Attendants can do art too? Different masters require different talents from their attendants. Upon being baptized, orphans become apprentice grey priests and begin doing laundry, cleaning the chapel, sweeping the halls, and so on. During that time, one might be chosen by an attendant to become an apprentice attendant thanks either to their hard work or the whims of circumstance. Once selected as an apprentice attendant, their home would move from the orphanage to the noble's quarter. They would do work more or less like normal servants in the noble's quarter while being taught by their elders how to become proper attendants. For that reason, all attendants are taught how to welcome visitors, but the exact details of their job depends on the priest or shrine maiden that they are serving. Some apprentice shrine maidens are taught how to offer flowers, chimed in Delia, and some apprentice priests are taught to specialize in math. I nodded at their explanation, intrigued, and turned to Gil. Naturally, his opinion was the most important since the gift was ultimately for him. What do you think, Gil? Should I ask Wilma? Huh? Me? Why ask me? Gil looked confused, so I explained that they would be a gift for him. You snuck food to the orphanage children every day, didn't you? You worked the hardest for them, and I want to reward that. A reward, huh? Gil began to agonize over his answer the moment he learned the context. He blushed increasingly over time for some reason and ultimately cradled his head. It's too embarrassing, I can't say anything, he mumbled to himself. He even started groaning while walking in circles. Maybe he had some particular feelings for Wilma? I watched him warmly, thinking that he was probably too embarrassed to go talk to her, until eventually he lifted his head with his resolve steeled. The art's fine with me either way. You should ask Wilma if you don't have the time, but yeah, all I want is that you write the letter, sister mine. 'Cause your letters are pretty, and, Unable to bear the embarrassment, Gil dashed out of the room and down the stairs. Oh, boy. I heard the loud slam of a door being thrown shut. He was probably holding up his room, trembling with embarrassment. What do you think, sister mine? I think that Gil is not used to getting praise, and him fighting against his embarrassment to praise me was very cute. I would thus like to dedicate my all to making this karate set. In that case, I advise asking Wilma to draw the art, said Fran, while blatantly holding back a laugh, thereby deciding my course of action. The conversation trailed off, and Fran started to get back to work, so I hurriedly called out to him. Wait, Fran, this is for you. For me? I took out the diptych I had made for Fran. It was larger than mine, so that it would be easier for him to hold, but they were still a matching pair. You have the most work out of any of us, don't you? You're my only adult attendant, but now you have a lot more work since I went and became the orphanage director. It must be really rough on you, and I'm grateful that you're working so hard for me. This is my way of rewarding you. I explained to Fran how to use the diptych, and when I told him that I had thought of making it after seeing Fran troubled at the gate, he smiled with his brown eyes crinkling. To think you would make a new product for me immediately after the idea struck you. I would like to master the management of your health soon, sister mine, so I might honor your gratitude. I noticed Delia watching Fran hold the diptych, envy clearly in her eyes. She was as easy to understand as ever. These are for you, Delia, I said. You didn't go to the orphanage, but you've worked hard keeping the first floor clean and greeting visitors while Fran and Gil were busy. What are they? A stone slate and a slate pen. Please practice the alphabet with them. Attendants need to learn to write letters for their masters, do they not? I wrote Delia's name on the slate and handed it to her. She pored over the letters with her eyes locked on the slate. I had thought that she might be somewhat literate compared to Gil, but it looked like she might not have been taught any of the alphabet at all while with the High Bishop. More likely not. Since if she's supposed to be the one greeting the visitors, then she might not need to be literate. This is your name, Delia. You should start practicing by writing your name, okay? Some time passed, and Gil finally calmed down and came out of his room, so I gave him his stone slate and slate pen, too. He immediately began competing with Delia over who could learn to read faster, and with their enthusiasm inspiring me, I began writing at the card while paying close attention to each letter. I selected exclusively words related to gods and the Bible so that Wilma, with her temple upbringing, would have an easier time drawing the art. Good idea. When Benno saw the finished product of my letters and Wilma's art, he immediately wanted to buy the rights to karate, but I wanted to make karate sets in the mine workshop for the kids. So even though Benno could normally buy total rights to a product so he could have full control, this time I made him incorporate that the mine workshop could continue making them. plus a 30% cut of profits for the idea. That meant from now on, I would earn some money each time a character set was sold. Good idea. You essentially get the patent rights to it now. So that every time one is sold, you get profit from it. I let out a sigh of relief with the knowledge that my metaphorical wallet would soon be heavier. Entertainment products and educational tools might sell pretty well. Preparing for the Star Festival. I had plans to visit Karina today so that I could order spare blue robes and a set of ceremonial robes. I initially ordered the ceremonial robes through Benno since they would take time to make, but apparently she needed to talk to me directly to discuss the embroidery patterns, the type of sash, the payment, and so on. This time, Karina said I could bring my mother or sister with me. She was pregnant and could use the help taking measurements. Benno had measured me over my clothes before, but since it seemed that we would have a long business relationship with each other, she wanted to start getting proper measurements of me sooner rather than later. To that end, I was bringing Tuli with me while Lutz stayed at home. Mom was a little sick, and although she wanted to come with us, Dad put his foot down. Oh, I think I know what that is! I'm betting that her being sick means she's pregnant. Because she does end up pregnant in Season 3. Ceremonial clothes use really good cloth, don't they? I've never seen cloth that this soft and silky before. Tuli touched the cloth with sparkling eyes after taking off my clothes and measuring me. The workshop she worked at didn't get orders for clothes that needed such fine cloth. In my case, I was using the high-quality cloth Benno gave the temple. It was originally white, but I had already given it to my mom to dye blue at the dyeing workshop where she worked. It was now a deep blue resembling lapis lazuli, which matched the color of my hair well. Mom, you can put your clothes back on now. Tuli, thank you for your help. The ceremonial robes will be embroidered with the words of a prayer. When the light shines on them, the gold and silver will shine beautifully. On top of that, the fur of the neck will have a crest sewn onto it. Most nobles use their family's crest, but I was using my workshop's crest since I didn't have a family one. This is your crest, mine? Uh-huh. This is a book, this is a pen with a jar of ink, there's also wood symbolizing paper and the flower hairpins I made. I thought up my own crest, but Benno made me add a lot of other things. Come on, mine, you probably made something weird that he had to fix. Mean. He just said it was too simple, that's all. Karina giggled at our conversation while spreading the blue cloth across the table. The lustrous piece of cloth covered the whole table, rippling like the ocean. In normal cases, the creation of ceremonial clothing begins with the selection of thread and weaving techniques to bring rise to certain designs on the cloth. But this time, we are using pre-existing cloth because there's not enough time to begin from scratch. I believe I would like to embroider the cloth with thread of the same color, such that a design arises when the light strikes it, but what design might you like, mine? When asked what design I wanted woven directly into the cloth, I first thought of a kimono. Maybe she was talking about making a damask similar to the classical Japanese rinzo, often used the kimonos of the Edo period. Still, even considering that the outfit would be much smaller than an adult's due to my short height, these robes needed large, swaying sleeves that necessitated a large body of cloth. Embroidering it all wouldn't take as long as weaving cloth from scratch, but it would still require a lot of work. Mrs. Karina, I actually haven't looked closely at any pieces of ceremonial clothing before, and I don't have any ideas for designs I might want. But if you're going to be embroidering all of this cloth, the simpler the better, I think. I probably saw ceremonial clothing at my own baptism, but my memories were dominated by the praying pose and stumbling upon the bookroom. I remembered the Bible that the high priest had, but not the fancy clothes he had been wearing. Mine, a noble ceremonial clothes can't be simple. Tuli insisted. They'll look down on you for being a commoner and stuff, but embroidering it all really will be a lot of work. Don't you think a simple design would make it a lot easier? As I desperately tried to calm Tuli's indignation, Karina put a hand on her cheek. It would be nice if I could make simple embroidery appear elegant as you made Tuli's baptism outfit appear fancy through simple adjustments. Do you perchance have any ideas on how to do that, mine? Asked Karina, leading me to search through my memories. A more broad design would necessitate... I cannot talk! Less work than an intricate design that required precise sewing. What about putting flowers on flowing water? Like the water would be curving lines like this with flowers here and there. You can make the design look fancier while minimizing the actual embroidery done by putting more space between the water's lines and scattering flower petals. Probably. I drew wavy lines on my slate, making them thick at times and thin at others to approximate flowing water, then added flowers with 5 heart-shaped petals here and there, before scattering a bunch of tiny hearts at random places. I believe that I will design a more elegant flower, but the flow of water is quite nice. I see that you truly are my brother's goddess of Oh my god, people keep referencing that. It's a good thing Thule doesn't know. Said Karina with an amused smile, causing me to flinch. No matter how much Benno and I denied it, nobody would believe us, even if his little sister Karina was joking about it. Mrs. Karina, how far has that rumor spread? Otto is spreading it because he finds it hilarious, so I have no idea. Oh, you big idiot! Benno's gonna get so mad at you! Yes, he will. As I ate the lunch that Karina ordered for me, she and Thule had a rousing discussion on what flowers to adorn the water flow with. I couldn't keep up at all since I didn't know the names of too many flowers. Mrs. Karina, said Thule, it looks like Mr. Benno wants to come inside and... Hate to interrupt your lunch, Karina, but I've got something to give to mine. Mind if I borrow her for a second? None at all. Mine finished eating long ago and has seemed bored ever since. Benno gestured me forward, so I jumped off my chair and walked to him. Read this when you're alone, that's all. If you notice any solutions to the problems, do me a favor and speak up. He said while handing me a sheet of paper. Once I had it, he casually lifted a hand in farewell and returned to the store. What? I looked around to make sure no one was close to me, then immediately opened up the folded piece of paper. On it was a list of problems Benno was in the process of struggling with. Wait, seriously? First there's a list of insults and warnings for him to throw at me, and now there's a list of problems for me to solve? I don't want to deal with this. The list had everything from trivial things like Otto being too happy about Karina's pregnancy to focus on his work, to business matters like the decoration, menu, service style, and prices of the Italian restaurant. I went through each problem one by one while thinking of answers for Benno. Then I reached the final problem, and the blood drained from my face. Mine, what did he want? What's on the paper? I must have been standing in place for a long time because Thule came over to peer at the letter with a worried expression. I hurriedly folded the paper, but then realized that Thule was illiterate and sighed in relief. The list of problems might as well have been lines of squiggles to her. It's a work secret. I quickly put the folded paper in my bag while evading Thule's curiosity. I tried thinking of a solution to the final problem, but nothing came to me immediately. Benno had said he would take Lutz to another city after securing a location for another workshop, and I never questioned that he would. It didn't occur to me at all that Lutz's dad might not give him permission to go. Lutz had faith in Benno just like I did. Every time he saw Benno coming back from another city, he asked with sparkling eyes if he had found a place for the workshop yet. Benno couldn't just go and tell him that they could leave the day his father gave him permission. That would send irreparable ruptures through Lutz's family life. After all, Lutz didn't know how to convince his dad to change his mind. As Thule and Karina agreed on putting flowers for each season in the embroidery and shifting the discussion to whether to order them vertically or horizontally, I cradled my head alone. You know, it's about time for the Star Festival. What? Where? What? Lutz spoke to me on the way to the temple, causing me to jump in surprise and look around. He narrowed his eyes and peered at me. It was enormously difficult for me to keep secrets from Lutz since he had been managing my health for so long. That was definitely the only reason he was suspicious. What's with you, Mine? Your head's been in the clouds all day. Not true. I just, What did you say again? Lutz sighed, having seen through my denial that my mind was somewhere else, and then repeated himself. The Star Festival. It's almost here. Want to go together this year? The Star Festival? Oh, that summer thing. It's about playing with water, isn't it? Not exactly. We throw towel fruits at each other. Towel fruits were those tiny red fruits I saw back in the spring. They fill up with water in the summer so much that they get to be the size of a fist. I understand it as a kind of a natural water balloon, but I had never seen a swollen one myself. What kind of festival is a Star Festival if it's not just about playing with water? Since I had missed the festival every time and knew nothing about it, Let's explain it for me. The Star Festival wasn't about playing with water. It was a day where marriages were held. It was basically a wedding ceremony for all couples held in the lower city once a year, and the towel were thrown at those getting married. When second bell rings, everyone who isn't in the wedding goes to the forest to pick up towels. The wedding starts at third bell and ends at fourth bell. That's when all the new married couples start going home. Everyone else waits in the central plaza and hides with their towels. I mentally envisioned a huge group of people walking down the main road with water balloons in their hands. It was surreal beyond me, really. But it was commonplace for cultures to have wedding ceremonies that appeared odd from the outside. Back on Earth, I had read books about wedding ceremonies where the attendees all had fistfights or barged in on the marriage before being consummated. Oh God. I had even read about one culture where the lord of a region got to consummate all marriages. Oh, no. No. It would be wise to just think of the Star Festival as an oddity in a long string of oddities. Oh, yeah, definitely. So once all the married couples reach the central plaza, a bell rings and the battle begins. We all start throwing our towels at the couples. What? At the married couples? Yep, the husband protects the wife while they run away. It's like testing his worth as a man. Most of the couples end up hit with a lot of fruit and throw some back while running around the city sopping wet. The festival was more bizarre than I expected. Japan itself had some odd marriage traditions, like exchanging strange gifts, but it all had meaning. Maybe there was some deep symbolic meaning to a city-wide water balloon fight that I just didn't get. Like the seeds of fruit symbolizing fertility or something. But you see, the people who throw the towel fruit the hardest are the people who didn't manage to get married that year. They hunt after the couples like crazy every time. It's messed up, but pretty funny too. I can understand that. Feelings of empathy arose in my heart. Even back in my Irano days, there was barely any romance in my life. Dating, marriage, it was all outside my world. I can understand very well the desire to throw fruit at newlyweds leaving a church with happy smiles on their faces. Okay, I understand the festival now. I'm looking forward to it. You sure got real motivated real fast. Anyway, once all the couples get chased away, we all eat the celebratory food prepared at the plaza. That's when kids go home happy to have eaten so much. They're not allowed to go back out no matter what, because that's when the beer comes out and it's time for an adults-only festival. As one might expect from a festival with star in the name, the most important part of it took place at night. Once the kids were driven out of the picture, the newlyweds returned and were enthusiastically celebrated while the unmarried people sought out romantic partners. According to Letts, that was always a source of frustration for those born in summer, as they had their adulthood ceremony taking place not long after the star ceremony. Do you think the kids from the orphanage go to the festival too? Who knows? Don't think I've ever actually seen them there. Actually, do you think you'll be busy at the temple? I remember something about a ceremony in fall you gotta go to. You sure we can go to the Star Festival together? Asked Lutz with worry, but I didn't have an answer for him. Given that this mass wedding was held in the temple, it was very possible I would have work to do. I'm not sure, but I'll ask the high priest. When we arrived at the temple, Lutz left to go back to the store. After seeing him off, I changed into my room and started writing a request to meet the high priest while asking Fran about the Star Festival. Fran, have you ever participated in the Star Festival? The Star Festival is an incorrect term. It is the Starbind ceremony. It is not a ceremony where marriages are. Is it not a ceremony where? Is it not a ceremony where marriages are blessed? Fran explained that in the temple it was called the Starbind ceremony, and that it was deeply rooted within religious history, honoring the god of darkness, blessing the marriage between the god of life and the goddess of earth. It was originally held at night, a time when it was easier to receive the god of darkness's divine protection, and even now it was held at night in the nobles' quarters. A ceremony for nobles and commoners used to be held at the same time, but when the population grew too large for that, the commoners began holding their ceremony during the day. If the god of darkness's blessings are relevant here, shouldn't it be held during the winter when the nights are longer? Sister mine, the god of darkness permitted the marriage in the summer, and as there is the offering ceremony in the winter, there would be no priest to offer blessings. Fran's explanation was understandable, and honestly, the thought of a wedding in the middle of winter gave me literal chills. I had suggested it myself, but on second thought, it'd be hard to attend a wedding when buried in the snow. Now that I think about it, reaching the temple in the middle of a blizzard would be unreasonable, and considering how new families would need to prepare their homes for winter, marrying before the fall is practical. It's nice that since everyone has the same anniversary, no husbands have to worry about mixing things up and ticking off their wife. And with that, I finished the letter. Fran, could you deliver this letter to the high priest? I want to ask him about what the orphanage does during the Starbind ceremony and what I might need to do myself. Despite the fact that I was meeting the high priest every morning to do paperwork, even the slightest of consultations needed advance notice through letters. It was a pain, but I was gradually getting used to it. There were a lot of minor questions I had that could be resolved in a single reply to a letter. In any case, both Fran and the high priest firmly told me not to speak recklessly when others were around. I had been prepared to wait several days for the meeting, but the moment the high priest read over the letter, he cradled his head and beckoned me into the hidden room. I merely followed with him there, not really understanding why my request for a meeting had frustrated him. You don't mind meeting me without advance notice? I asked, right after entering the hidden room, only to be met with a sharp glare. Normally he would simply offer harsh criticism with a collected expression, but in this room he would lecture me with his frosty wrath. I preferred to be in his normal room when he was mad. You fool, the Starlight ceremony is the day after tomorrow. It will be over by the time I sent a letter of invitation. Someone just said it was soon, so I thought I had more time. I had been postponing it due to the fact that we were progressing steadily through my built-up paperwork. But I see that your education can wait no longer. If he wasn't certain before, the High Priest now knew for a fact that my ignorance of all temple matters remained as consistent as ever. That was bad. I felt danger crackling in the air. It was a well-known rumor between priests in the orphanage that becoming the High Priest's attendant meant undergoing extreme blood-curdling training, and I got the feeling that I was about to learn firsthand whether that was true. I looked away, and out of the corner of my eye saw the High Priest shaking his head with exasperation. Good grief. To answer your question, the Starbind ceremony is a ceremony for adults. As you are still an apprentice, you cannot participate. Stay at the orphanage, and as director, keep careful watch so that no orphans leave. Many citizens will enter and leave the temple during the ceremony, as there will be blue priests servicing the weddings. In order to receive donations in return, you must absolutely ensure that not a single orphan interrupts. He told me to stay in the orphanage, which made me panic a little. I wanted to participate in the Star Festival and throw towels, not stay stuck up in the orphanage all day. I want to participate in the Lower Cities Star Festival instead. Is that okay? And the Lower Cities Star Festival is... The High Priest raised his eyebrows slightly. It's a festival where kids go to the forest to collect tau fruits in the morning, then throw them at each other in the afternoon. What in the world? How does that have anything to do with the Starbind ceremony? I don't really know. I couldn't go last year due to a devouring fever, and I couldn't go any of the years before that since I was never healthy back in those days. So I never participated. I've been looking forward to going for the first time this year, so... High Priest's eyebrows furrowed deeply. It was an expression teetering between rejection and sympathy. Him wanting to tell me no, but sympathizing with how I've never been able to participate before now. Would it really be so bad for me to go? I think it would actually be a lot quieter here if you let all the orphanage kids go out for the festival. Yeah, because then they wouldn't have to worry about anybody getting involved. They'll be fine during the morning, but what about the afternoon? There'll be fruits flung everywhere, will they not? Sending the orphans out to the city during that time will cause unnecessary conflict. The Blue Priest will be going to the nobles' quarters in the afternoon, and there needs to be someone to bear responsibility. It seemed that once the morning ceremony ended, the Blue Priests and their attendants left the temple to attend the Starbind ceremony in the nobles' quarter. I clapped my hands together with a sudden realization. If nobody's around, who would care? Can't we just play in the temple grounds? High Priest, what would you say to everyone at the orphanage gathering fruit in the morning, then throwing them at each other exclusively within the orphanage? I want the kids to experience the festival as well. I was looking forward to it myself, too. The High Priest lowered his eyes in thought, then slowly raised his gaze back up to me. Clean up after yourselves thoroughly. If you don't cause enough of a stir for the citizens to notice, you may do as you like. I thank you ever so much. As soon as noon came, we held a briefing session in the orphanage. We could do as we liked as long as the Blue Priest didn't find us. So after finishing their chapel cleaning early in the morning, they would change into their forest clothes and wait for Les and me. Once we were there, we would stealthily sneak out and head to the forest to gather towels. The orphans were overjoyed since they normally spent the day of the festival stuck in the orphanage, but the Grey Priest couldn't go with them since they needed to prepare carriages for the Blue Priest and stand guard at the gate. They watched the excited kids with envy. All of those jobs last only until the festival ends, correct? The throwing will begin with the Blue Priest and their attendants leave for the nobles' quarters, so we can start once everyone finishes their jobs. It'd be better if everyone has fun together. You can all wait until the priests have finished their jobs, can't you? I asked the kids and they all nodded hard in reply. We'll wait. I'll bring lots of extra fruit for the people who couldn't come. The busy Grey Priest and the kids ultimately came to a compromise, where the kids agreed to wait to start the throwing and the Grey Priest prepared food for dinner. Unbelievably, they normally went without dinner on the day of the Starbind ceremony since they didn't get food without nobles there. I'll ask my chef to make plenty of food for all. After returning to my room, I told Hugo and Ella through Fran that they could leave work on 4th Bell on the day of the Starbind ceremony, but in return, I wanted them to make dinner on top of lunch. It seemed that Hugo was an unwed adult and thus had a burning desire to participate in the festival. Fran told me that he was determined to finish his work as soon as possible. I missed my own opportunity to throw fruit at newlyweds, but as long as the kids in the orphanage get to have fun, that was fine by me. Okay, hang on. I'll keep going. I need to make these longer. The Star Festival. It was the day of the Star Festival. The sun was in the sky, but it was still early enough that the summer heat hadn't fully set in. A stir that only festivals could bring was already running through the city, and crowds of people were heading for the south and east gates. despite the fact it was so early that the gates hadn't opened yet. Bye, Mom. Don't get too excited out there, dear. As always, please take good care of mine for me. I left home with Lutz, who had come to get me. Tuli came with us at first, but left to enjoy the festival with her own friends. She was running towards the gate with Ralph and Faye. Bye, Mine. Let's have fun today. Bye, Tuli. After waving Tuli, Ralph, and Faye goodbye, Lutz and I had turned around and walked in opposition to the flow of people heading toward the temple. We were wearing our normal clothes so that we could safely get wet. People popping out of side alleys were walking to the gate with excitement sparkling in their eyes. Not a single person was wearing their best clothing. Fighting against the waves of people, we passed the central plaza and headed further north. It was just about there that the crowds thinned. One could guess that those living in the north had left long ago to reach the gates as they opened. You're staying at the orphanage, Mine? But why? I, having intended to go with everyone to the forest to pick up towels, looked up at Lutz with wide eyes. He grimaced uncomfortably before continuing. If it were just you and me going to the festival, I was going to get 2 or 3 towels before heading back. But we're all going to throw them at each other in the orphanage instead of at newlyweds, yeah? That means we'll need more. We won't make it back to the temple by 4th bell with you with us. Lutz's argument was rock solid and forced me to hang my head sadly. As always, I hated my body for making me dead weight to everyone. Lutz patted my head and comforted me while lowering his voice a bit. Not to mention, someone might drive by the orphanage to check up on things. You'll want to be there if that happens, right? As director? You're not wrong. It was very likely that the high priest or high bishop would send an attendant to check on the orphanage and give warnings. If the high bishop were to learn that the orphanage was empty, he would probably have strong words, or worse, for both me and the high priest. You're not the only one staying behind to work, yeah? You stick with them while we get the towels. I can't help if you don't. Okay, I'll stay behind. The second bell rang across the city just as we reached the temple. It was time for the gates to open. Fran and I watched as Lutz left the orphanage through the back entrance with a finger over his lips to signal that they should be quiet. The guard at the gate could barely hold back his laughter, and the same went for me. Once they get past the gate, they ran off from the temple, chattering excitedly. I went to my chambers feeling envious and changed into my blue robe so that I could go to the orphanage. Did you not want to go to the forest, Delia? Going to the forest won't help me be a good mistress. I want to learn the alphabet as soon as possible. Gil and Delia were competing to learn the alphabet first, but Gil was learning faster. Probably because he was bringing his card to the orphanage and playing with everyone. Understandable, you are losing to Gil after all. Geez, just by a little bit. I'll beat him in no time. Delia had stayed behind by choice, and so I left her to watch over the chefs while Fran and I went to the orphanage. After climbing down the stairs, I saw that the door to the kitchen was thrown open, and I could see Hugo and Ella cooking furiously, attempting to finish everything before 4th bell so they could join the others in the towel throwing. The High Priestess requested that I spend this morning instructing you on the rituals and ceremonies of the temple. You will not be able to participate in the towel throwing until you have memorized them all. The High Priest apparently had no mercy when it came to education and had immediately developed a curriculum for me. I had to learn a surprising amount today. As I slumped in despair at everything written on the board, Fran informed me that the High Priest had estimated from my math skills and degree of literacy that my academic level was high enough to justify this rapid pace. But the High Priest misunderstood. My math skills were carried over from my past life, and I had worked hard on becoming literate exclusively because it was necessary to read books. He shouldn't expect these talents to carry over to memorizing a bunch of temple ceremony stuff. I wasn't that good of a student. I turned down the hall on my way to the orphanage, and there by chance I came face to face with the Blue Priest for the first time. He must have been heading to prepare for the ceremony. Well, if it isn't that little upstart commoner wearing her blue robes without an ounce of shame. Today's ceremony is no place for kids, you know. Rather than participating in the ceremony, the High Priest is giving me the duty of watching over the children in the orphanage. Oh, I see. Taking care of orphans is a good fit for a commoner like you. Maybe you do know your place after all. I thank you ever so much for your praise. The Blue Priest gave a bored and left. I resumed walking to the orphanage. Fran furrowed his brows with concern and spoke to me sounding worried. Sister mine, don't worry about it, Fran. Words will never hurt me. They go in one ear and out the other, no harm done. I entered the orphanage and saw that there were a few gray shrine maidens still there, as one would expect from shrine maidens who had been left in the temple as potential flower bearers. They were pretty with striped faces. Oh, my sister mine, what might bring you here? They turned gracefully my way and tilted their heads. Each move they made was thoroughly refined, and they all looked much more like rich young ladies than I did. I decided to stay here since someone needs to be here to deal with anyone who might drop by. Do you girls have work today? No, we simply do not have much interest in the forest, so we were discussing whether we would like to make soup instead. I found a familiar face among the gray Shrine Maidens. She was a young girl about 15 with her blonde hair close to a bright orange. Wilma! Bound up tightly behind her head. Well, given that she had her hair up, she was technically an adult. But her face was so young-looking that girl was the only word that came to mind. Wilma, thank you for drawing the art for the cards. They were wonderful. Wilma's eyes, which were light brown and always had a tinge of mirth to them, crinkled happily. If she looked bright before, she was outright radiant now. Truly, I should be thanking you for affording me the opportunity to draw once again. It had been so long since I held a pen that my heart jumped with joy. The children seemed very interested in the cards, as you call them, but I do not suppose they were for the orphanage. They were a gift from my attendant, but if you would draw another set, I can order more boards for the children. I could order the boards and write the letters myself, but my art style was so different from this place's that everyone around me did their darndest to stop me from drawing. Wilma's help was essential for making cards up. Oh my, certainly? I would be ever so grateful if you did. Wilma beamed a smile. She was overflowing with passion for art and love for the children. It had been Wilma who rushed to clean the children in the basement before anyone else. When I promised to make a set of cards just for the orphanage children, the girl beside Wilma lowered her eyes sadly. If only I could draw like that, Wilma, I too could be useful. But my, Rosina, do your talent not lie in music? Rosina, the girl with the mature, pretty face who had just sighed regretfully, seemed to be skilled in playing instruments. Talk about elegant. I wanted to hear Rosina's music, but apparently her former master had taken her instruments with her, leaving Rosina without anything to play. I wanted to buy one for her, but instruments were expensive, even back in Japan, so it wasn't hard to imagine that a good instrument would be astronomical in price here. Fran, are instruments expensive? It would be better to ask Master Benno that, but regardless, it is required for Blue Shrine Maidens to be trained in music. If you wish to learn, sister mine, I believe that we would be of assistance. If you would have us, we will be grateful for gratefully be your attendants. Rosina had served the same Apprentice Shrine Maiden that Wilma had. The Apprentice was quite taken with all forms of art and kept her attendants thoroughly separated between those who did work and those who appreciated culture with her. Rosina and the others spent each day polishing their singing, music, dance, poetry, art, and so on. I spent about 3 years practicing piano, but I never touched another instrument outside of music class. But there were probably no recorders or melodicas here, and I doubted they would let me pass off castanets as my instrument of choice. Not only did I have to study paperwork and matters related to the temple, I also had to go through classical training in music and the arts. I was starting to think I had been a little too hasty with becoming an apprentice Blue Shrine Maiden. Just a little. In any case, sister mine, we will be off making the soup if you need us. Wilma and the others went to make the soup, leaving Fran and me alone in the orphanage dining hall. So, Fran, what would you think if I said I wanted to take Wilma as an attendant? Would the high priest give us permission? Might I ask why? Wilma is good at art, isn't she? The cards are one thing, but there are lots of other ideas I have that will need art to make a reality. I want to secure her for myself before any other blue priests take her. Plus, I think a cultured adult gray shrine maiden will be important for me. I believe that the high priest will in all likelihood grant his permission, but as Wilma takes care of the young children more than anyone else, I am uncertain what will happen to them if she is taken away from the orphanage. I see. I'll ask Wilma what she thinks later and figure something out then. Third bell rang as Fran lectured me on the temple ceremonies. It got pretty noisy outside not long after. The couples had come to the temple for the Starbind ceremony. I wanted to go see, but naturally I couldn't. I worked on finishing my quota with my heart fluttering, and before I knew it, fourth bell had rung. That signified the end of the Starbind ceremony, and the bustle slowly grew distant. Once it was completely silent, the children quietly returned from the back entrance. I could see them stealthily climbing the stairs while holding their mouths and stepping gently. Welcome back, everyone. Did you gather lots of towels? Sister mine, shh. After being reminded not to speak, I hurriedly closed my mouth. Only after Lutz came inside, shut the back entrance to the basement, and lifted his hand did everyone start talking. We got lots and lots. We put all our baskets by the basement. Lunch is first, right? Indeed it is. You should all wash your hands and wait for the divine gifts to be delivered. I'll briefly return to my room. Since Lutz was here, I went back to my chambers, not through the hall but through the basement. I climbed down the stairs where I saw baskets filled with the towels everyone had gathered. Lutz, can I borrow 4 of the towels you gathered? My chefs couldn't go to the forest, and I want to give them some. Yeah, sure. I returned to my chambers through the back entrance with Fran carrying the towel fruits, whereupon I saw Hugo and Ella waiting outside the kitchen impatiently, having already finished preparing lunch. Through Fran, I gave the two of them eat 2 towels each. I thank you both ever so much for working on the day of the festival. It isn't much, but please accept these fruits. What, really? Thank you. I felt Hugo dash away the moment I turned my back. Just how much had he been looking forward to the Star Ceremony, or the Star Festival? And who did he intend to throw those towels at? I heard Ella yell out, "Hugo, please," out of consideration for me, but I had newfound social awareness and knew to climb the stairs without turning around. I ate lunch, which was delivered by Delia, on the second floor of Lutz. Today's dish was faux capellini. I had them chop plain pasta as thin as possible, then for the tomato sauce and mozzarella, I selected pommes sauce and a kind of cheese with a mild flavor. To emulate basil sauce, I prepared plant oil with salt, and either herbs or Rieger's faux garlic, hoping that one of the two would give me what I wanted. We also had a salad with seasonal vegetables and steamed chicken. In truth, I was really in the mood for cold salmon noodles, but as always, my hands were tied by the apparent lack of Japanese-like ingredients here. You sure worked hard today, Let's eat as much as you want. Everyone looks so happy and excited thanks to you. I'm really grateful. Yeah, we went in hard. Some kids went so far into the forest looking for more, I thought we weren't going to make it back in time. It sounds so fun. I wish I could get to see the festival. I was stuck here studying with Fran the whole morning. Hearing the orphans talk excitedly about how they had seen people hiding with towel fruits on their way back to the temple made me endlessly jealous. Hey, Mine, want to go check out the festival just for a second? The newlyweds are probably all gone by now, so we won't be throwing fruit or anything. Just seeing what the city looks like right now. The kids gotta eat after we're done with lunch, so there's some time, yeah? Divine gifts were given to attendants after the blue priests had finished, and there were some gray priests, no doubt, still preparing carriages, so we still had some time before everyone was ready to throw fruit. Yeah, let's go. I took off my blue robes to return to my normal outfit, then dashed out of the temple gate with Lutz. The soaked city streets glistened beneath the summer sun. The ground near the temple wasn't wet at all, but the further south we went, the more soaked our feet got. Just how many towel fruits had people thrown to get the streets wet enough that not even the summer sun could evaporate the water? That train of thought was followed by the sight of kids running down the street and laughing, soaked from head to toe with water dripping from their heads. They were heading towards some loud hustle and bustle further south. Let's follow them, Let's. Don't get too close, all right? Following Lutz's advice, I stealthily watched them from the shadows and saw that there was a huge chaotic battle underway in a somewhat narrow alleyway. There were no foes or allies. There was merely stalwart heroes throwing towels while shouting meaningless battle cries. Their shouts were loud, amplified, and echoing off the walls of the alley. Everyone was soaked to the bone. Naturally, young women wearing light summer clothes had their outfits clinging tightly to their bodies, turning transparent in the worst cases. Many of the men were running around shirtless as if their shirts clinging to them had gotten to be more annoying than they were worth. Oh, this is like the kind of celebration people throw when their favorite football or baseball team wins a championship. Gah! Les suddenly yelled as water exploded on his head. The drops of cold water splattered on me too, and when I turned around I saw a bunch of kids behind Lutz, towels held at the ready. Hey, we found some kids that aren't wet at all. The kids yelled out, and immediately the huge crowd stopped their chaotic war to look our way. Uh-oh. Their eyes shone like those of a hunter who had just found their prey, which sent a shudder down my spine. It leaked from my mouth, and I felt myself shrink. Run, Mine, avoid as many as you can, but I can't avoid any. He should know better than to expect me to do anything requiring agility. All I could do was lift my arms and try to block any direct blows to my face. Lutz took my hand and ran, smacking down a towel thrown our way. The towel, which really was swollen like a water balloon, exploded after hitting the ground. It was a nice save that made me sigh in relief, but Lutz blocking it just made our hunters more eager for victory. They dodged it, cheeky little brats. Get 'em, everyone! And so towel after towel came crashing down on us. They even felt like water balloons, so they didn't hurt even when thrown at full force, but the cold water running down my spine and the sensation of the fruit bursting against my back sent goosebumps rising all over my body. So cold! They're so cold! Mine, just move your legs! Let's only manage to block the first thrown towel. There was no way to avoid them once adults joined the fray. We were surrounded in no time, powerless against their greater numbers. There was no hope of escape and no way of dodging them all. We were doomed the moment we drew the attention of the high-spirited festival goers, and we were soaked in seconds. Not a bad job for a twerp. You almost saved her. Can't wait to see what a hero he grows up to be, huh? Cackling, the adults praised Lutz for his efforts to protect me before rushing off like a storm in search of their next victims. Lutz, I'm definitely going to get sick now. I grasped at my dripping wet skirt and shook my head, making water fly off of me while Lutz nodded. Ethel might get super mad and say you can't go to next year's festival. Well, I know what it's like now. I know it all too well. I don't think I really want to go to a festival that's guaranteed to get me sick, I said while wringing my hair to squeeze out the water. Let's and I did our best to dry ourselves off as we returned to the temple. The north of the city seemed more invested in the upcoming feast than the towel throwing, and preparations were already beginning at various plazas with wells. Boards were set on boxes to form makeshift tables, while others brought food from elsewhere. Man, I wish I were hungry enough for some of that. We just ate, didn't we? The people throwing towels and running all over the city would no doubt realize how empty their stomachs were once they started seeing food. Jeez, what in the world? Look at you. Wait outside until the bath is ready. You're making the room filthy. Delia yelled at me before Mom got the opportunity to. Les murmured that she was scarier than Effa, and I agreed with a slight nod. As he waited outside the door for the bath to be finished, Fran appeared wearing his usual forest clothing in preparation for the upcoming water battle. Upon seeing us soaking wet, he began rubbing his temples. Sister mine, the orphans have already finished preparing. You might as well go as you are. Delia, prepare the bath to be ready for when she returns. Delia was sitting out the towel throwing because it wasn't dignified. Gil had already gone to the orphanage a while ago. The Grey Priests who had been preparing the carriages for the Blue Priests have sent word that all the Blue Priests and their attendants had left for the nobles' quarters. The gate is now shut. We headed to the orphanage through the back entrance and saw that everyone had changed from their robes to their second-hand clothes. The towels set in the basement had been taken outside. At Les's suggestion, we split into 2 teams, with Fran balancing them by age and gender and so on. We selected a location broad enough to run around in, and everyone promised not to leave it. Clean up after yourselves. Don't get loud enough for those outside the temple to notice and get curious. Finally, have fun without hurting yourselves or others. Understood? Understood. Alright, we're going to hand out the towels. Let's glance at the group of baskets. As the person of the highest status there, I had to move first. The towels I had seen in the forest before were about the size of a single knuckle, but the ones in the basket were as large as my fist. They were indeed swollen with water and felt just like water balloons. I hadn't gotten a good look at them before, but due to closing my eyes, so this was my first time really looking at towels. Wow, they really are big. The second I grabbed a large towel on top of the pile, I felt mana being drained from me just like I had during the offering with the divine instrument. The towel began twisting and bulging in my hand, changing shape. What's wrong, mine? It's sucking out my mana. I could see what looked like hard seeds popping into existence and growing within the halfway transparent towel. This is so gross. What's happening? Like I would know. As I floundered with the towel still in hand, its previously light red color darkened due to the seeds beginning to overwhelm the water. The squishy red skin hardened and became opaque. It was at this point that I finally realized what I was looking at. This red fruit was no doubt the tromba seed I had encountered in the past. This is the tromba. Go get knives. I yelled, still holding the towel, and let's stop peering at it to immediately go rushing to the basement, which we now use as a storage area. He returned to baskets filled with knives and bill hooks, and then started giving instructions to the orphans. Anyone used to gathering in the forest by now, ready your knife. A valuable paper-making material is about to show up. Gather every bit of it that you can. The orphans all yelled, right, in unison, and by the time everyone had their knives, the towel was rock hard and getting increasingly hot. At this point, I could expect the tromba to pop out if I threw it to the ground like I did before. Sister mine, we're ready. Gil stood by my side, wielding his bill hook like a crime-fighting hero from a kid's TV show. Let's, with a knife in hand, poured it at some nearby unpaved grass. Mine, throw it where there's dirt. With Les and Gil's voices in my ears, I took aim at the grass and threw the towel as hard as I could. I chose you, growing tree thing. What the fuck? What the fuck? Okay. That's all I'm going to do tonight. For the moment, anyway. And I'll see you guys next time.